Welcome back. Today we're going to start learning how to make advertisements. And we're going to start with a trifold brochure. Now this is done on a 8.5 by 11. And it's folded into basically into 6 panels. Okay, it's folded 3 times, but you'll have 6 panels to work with. So the first thing we need to do is let's go ahead and make a brand new document. And we're going to go ahead and choose 8.5 by 11. We're going to turn the orientation to landscape. We want 2 pages for this, but it doesn't matter. We don't have to have them facing, so we can go ahead and turn that off. Our margins. Now the margins, that will be based on where you want your graphics and your type, how far or how close, I should say, to the edge of the paper you want that to be. Okay. And for this example, we're going to do it with no bleed. So I'm going to go ahead and set the margins to 1/4 inch all the way around the page. And this number really will be dictated by if you're doing the printing in-house. Remember we talked about running stuff off a color copier. And this is the most cost-effective way to do it. And by setting the page up on 8.5 by 11 with no bleed, that will give you a product that you don't have to have no special paper for, because normally if it has bleed, it has to go on a larger sheet and be cut down to its finished size. That's why I'm saying that 8.5 by 11 is the cheapest way to go, by sticking to the finished size and not having bleed on it. And the margins will depend on how far to the edge your printer can print to. Okay? So let's go ahead and create that page. Now we need to set the page up to be able to fold correctly, and where our content needs to be when we actually do the fold. Okay, so we need to put some guides up and some columns. Now since we're working with a trifold brochure, a common mistake that people make when they create these is that they make the panels all the same size. And that is incorrect. They need to have one of the panels shorter than the other 2. The one that gets tucked into the inside. Okay, because it's folded twice. And if the panel that gets folded to the inside is not shorter than the other 2 panels, it could actually jam in the folder. So that's why you need to have one panel shorter than the other 2. So let's set that up now. And let's go to pages. And we're going to go to our master page. We're going to set these guys up here in our master page. Now if you look at Rudy's Place, if you go to the website, you will find a link under the lessons page on how to size the trifold brochure. Now the measurements, we have a front and a back page, And it's basically all three panels are the same numbers except that they're just flipped. Okay, and let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to bring up that page that we're referencing to, and you'll see that we have the outside of the page, okay, and that's going to have the cover, the back cover, and the inside flap. Now if you look at the measurements, you'll see that two of the panels, the cover and the back cover in this instance, are both the same size, 3.688 inches. Now the inside flap is the panel that is shorter, and you'll see here that it is short by 1/16 of an inch. Okay, and that's to give enough room so when it goes to that folder that it's not going to have a problem folding it together. The other panel, which is the flip side, it's the inside of the panel, we have the same numbers again, except that it starts with 3.688 inches, and then the middle panel is 3.688 inches, and it's the very right hand panel that's the short or smaller panel, which is 3.625. And that's just reflexive. You were to take that sheet of paper and turn it around, okay, that short panel would be on your right hand side on the inside of these panels, okay, of this brochure. To set this up correctly, we'll start with the outer page first, and then we'll do the inside, okay, or the flip side next. So what we want to do, and this is why this is important, that one, you know, instead of doing the margins and columns, okay, it's much easier to actually do it by hand, because the margin and columns will give you it'll give you even columns, which is not what we want. Plus we need to be able to give, depending on what our margin is, will be dictated on how we're going to have our margins on the inside. And that depends on you, whether it's going to be 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch, 1/2 inch, whatever. Okay. So we're going to pull out a guide first. And the first thing I notice when I'm looking at this is I need to turn around and set up our workspace and make sure we're set to printing and proofing. So let's go ahead and pull a guide out by clicking and dragging from the ruler. And you just drop it anywhere, because we're going to turn around and we're going to dial in that first number, which is 3.625. And when I do that, the guide will snap over to that number. Now, if you remember, let me pull out a second guide. If you remember, the next panel needs to be 3.688 inches wide. Okay? So we need to be able to add, and this is going to be a neat little trick here for you guys. You have your guide selected, and instead of trying to break out a calculator and figuring out what 3.625 and then the next number 3.688 is added together, InDesign will actually do the math for you. So let me show you how that works. You just have to put in the first number, 3.625 plus 3.688, 688, And then you just hit return, and it'll add those numbers for you automatically, which turns out to be 7.313. So you'll notice that the guide jumps over to the two numbers that we just added together. And that's a great feature in InDesign, so you don't have to figure out by whipping out your phone or whipping out a calculator to figure out what those numbers are together. You can have it do the math for you. So now that we have that, we're ready to make our margins. And the margins are based on what we have on the outside is what we'll do here on the inside now. These two guides represent our fold, where we're going to be folding the brochure at. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hit my Z key for zoom, and I'm going to zoom in. And what we want to do is we want to add a 1/4 inch on each side. Since we have that for our page, we want to have it for each and every column that we have in this layout. So a really easy way to do that is if we come over here to where our rulers are, right in the upper left hand corner, we can actually take, and if you click in that corner where those two little arrows are, we can move the 0 point around onto the page. But all we want to do is just take it and put it right where the guide is, and it'll snap when we get near to it. And you let go, and you'll see that when we do, the 0 point and 0 point gets moved. Okay? Now that we know this is 0, it's very easy for us to do a 1/4 inch on each side, because we can now just drag a guide out and look at the ruler here at the top, and it will, as you can see too, when we go, it actually snaps when we get close to these numbers, and we can now see that we have a 1/4 inch on each side of this fold. And let me hit Command 0, and then it gets a full page, and that works for us. We now have our guides that now match all the way around. We have one on each side here, so that when we place our content in the panel, it all fits and it all looks correct. So let's do the same thing with this other two panels here on this side. Let me zoom in, and then we'll do the same thing. We're just going to come over and zero out that guide, and then pull some guides out to do 1/4 on each side of where that fold is. And if you find when you drop it that you're not right on the money, you can actually come up here and plug that in, 0.25, and have it move over for you. So here we have our front page, I should say, all done with the 3 panels on it. And here's our cover, front cover, here's our back cover, and here's our inside flap or inside panel. Alright, before we go any farther though, I want to go ahead and let's save this down. And I'm going to go ahead and name this Trifold brochure. So we won't lose what we've done. Now, right now we have 2 pages that are going off this master page. Remember, we did this to the master page, but you'll notice that both these pages have the same measurements, and we can't have that. So we need to work on the inside page. And we're going to come over here. We're going to go to our master page. And we're going to right click. And we're going to duplicate the master page spread A. And when we do this, we now have a B master. Okay. And we're going to assign that to the page number 2. And we do that by clicking and dragging that down and hovering over the page you want that to apply to. And now that will have all the attributes that we do to this master page. Okay. So we have a master page A applied to the first page and a master page B applied to the second page. So we're going to come over here and work on the master page B. So make sure that you double click it. And we're going to turn around and fix these guides. And that's what we need to do to make this work correctly. So we know that if we click on this one time and we have our rulers all out of whack, all right, because they're not sitting in the corner, to reset them, this is really easy. We just come over to the very upper left hand corner where we originally moved those 0 points out. If you just double click it, it'll automatically snap back the 0 points back to this upper left hand corner over here. Okay. Now, by doing that, we need to go ahead and make sure we have our first guide selected. And this is for the inside page. And this is going to be for panel 1. We want the rules, if you remember looking at that setup that we had. And let me go ahead and bring that back up again real quick. So that on the inside panel, we're going to be looking at 3.668 and 3.668, and we're going to be adding those together for the second one and 3.668 for the first one. Okay, so let's go ahead and use InDesign, and we're going to just plug in 3.688. I'm just going to move that over. And then we're going to do the same thing with the second one. We'll select that guide and we'll go. And since this is the same number, this is kind of nice. 3.688. And we could put times 2. Okay, we can actually do a math function on there. And that will double that on the ruler, and now it's at its new spot. Okay, and all we have to do now is do the same thing as we did before. We're going to zoom in and we're just going to zero out that middle guide, or where the fold is, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to change that to 0.25, and we're going to do the same thing with the other one. And if you notice, that's a negative, so we just got to make sure that we leave that there, or we go ahead and put in the negative 0.25. I'm going to hit Command 0. So now we have that new, these three are set. We're going to zoom in on the other side and do the same thing. We're going to drag that 0 point to where that fold is. Select the guide. And we're going to make that minus 0.25. And this one will be a 0.25. All right. And now if we go to our page B, it reflects what we did on master page B. And the first page reflects what's going off this master A. And you'll see these things jog, which is how it should be. When I'm talking about the guides moving back and forth. And that represents that short panel on both sides. So we're really ready now to go ahead and create our layout. In our next video, we'll make a mock-up using this file and some graphics and some placeholder text. We'll see you in the next video.